I'm back with another episode of the Clean Money Podcast. This episode brought to you courtesy of Umeme City, Rooftop Solar Simplified. And today I have, do I qualify to say my learned friend?
No, you don't.
Oh man, the way I'd practiced for this. Omuga Ogwang Ongo.
Yes.
Hey, Karibu.
Thanks.
Intellectual lawyer.
Intellectual property.
Intellectual property law. Are there many of those in this country?
We are a few, I think 7, who are worth mentioning.
My job today is going to be hard. So what is this intellectual property all about, and how does it tie into wealth and even generational wealth?
Nice. Thanks, James, for having me.
Yeah.
Intellectual property and wealth. You cannot have meaningful wealth without identifying the intellectual property aspects.
Really?
Because most of us, especially in our time, we only approach and we only appreciate wealth on one side of wealth. Mm-hmm. The finite, the tangible aspects of wealth.
Yes.
That, oh, that guy is wealthy, he bought a new car. Oh, that guy is wealthy, you see he lives in Runda nowadays.
He owns that mall.
Yeah, he owns that mall. Oh, that guy is wealthy, man. He has X amount in his account.
Yeah.
Wealth is built or is made up of 2 components. Mm-hmm. There is the form aspect of wealth, and then there is the substance aspect of wealth. Most of us who are just talking of wealth as what you can touch, we are primarily dealing with the form substance of wealth.
Okay.
Without the corresponding attachment to the substance part of wealth. All wealth must be built on one thing: ownership.
Yeah.
And most of us, we attach ownership to something that we can see tangibly. But more importantly, ownership that is of mentioning is ownership of what you cannot touch.
Really?
Yes, ownership of what you can touch. It's very easy if I ask you, what do you own? And then you tell me, I bought X, and I bought X, and I bought X.
Yeah.
Actually, that paper we call money is not even money. Because that paper must be supported by a substance of money. So that substance is the one that gives paper effect.
Yeah.
So what happens when that paper fluctuates and the substance remains? Then, more importantly, the substance will pull the paper back. So intellectual property is primarily concerned with the creation of the human mind. And that creation of the human mind, a market should come out of it for it to meet the threshold of intellectual property. So that means that not mere thinking is intellectual property. The only thing that we can attach intellectual property relevance to it, because at the end of it, that thought must generate wealth. Sawa. So that infrastructure that people really need to put in place is what we call intellectual property awareness. The awareness that these components of this that I'm doing in this aspect can create this market, can create this economy, can create this industry, can create this product. So intellectual property, James, is the creation of the human mind with the interest of commercialization.
What are you saying? So are you basically telling me everybody has intellectual property, whether they know it or not?
One thing. They only have to meet one thing. Do they have a mind?
They do, even though some we doubt, but they do, yeah.
So any person, for the lack of, for the interest of just being simple, any person with a head is a candidate of intellectual property creations or intellectual property operations.
Okay.
Any person with a head. That means that most of us, we need to identify that everything about me, everything about what I'm doing, if I'm someone in entrepreneurship, anything about my business can actually create other markets. So when we are trying to look at what can come out of this, what can come out of clean money, what can come out of this. Now, when we are having such engagements, then we are talking on intellectual property.
That's some deep stuff.
Shallow.
Because no, it's deep stuff because we've not been taught to think like that.
No, we are not.
We've been taught to focus on the tangible.
Sure.
You know, our mindset is wired in a particular way.
Yes.
And that's why sometimes I struggle with this thought, and I find it interesting that you have somebody who went to school, they got a degree, they even got a master's, but they have nothing because they can't find a job. And for me, I keep wondering, okay, but you have knowledge, but you have no job. Can't you fill in that gap? Can't you see something there?
Actually, James,
Yeah.
let me say this. No one with the knowledge can lack something to do. People with information lack things to do.
What's the difference then between knowledge and information?
Because knowledge is never given. Information can
Information
be
is given, yes.
Knowledge is what you bring out. Knowledge is resident in an individual. Knowledge is the ability in you to figure out things.
Yes.
That is not given. No one gives us that but the maker. One of the fundamental weakness of education is that education has hyped information over knowledge. We might purport to think that we are advancing knowledge in education, but actually what we are advancing is information. Let me ask you this. If I was to tell you that what are the factors of production, according to what they taught us in economics, they said that a factor of production is that thing that whosoever owns has command, productivity. And they used to tell us that land was a factor of production.
Yes.
When was land a factor of production? After Karl Marx wrote the book, The Wealth of Nations. In those days, and actually that's the worst thing that we still have even up to date, that even in our books, students doing PhD in economics, even in Kenya today, are still being taught that land is a factor of production. During those times, when Adam Smith put out this word, the wealth of nations, the nations that could command output was largely the nations that had large chunks of land. And that's why we had colonialism. Because every country had to acquire much land. Why? Because the industries they had then were running on agriculture. Yes. Do they still have those industries today? Because I can tell you for free, one of the most unproductive companies in East and Central Africa has more than 3,500 acres of land. The most productive company in Africa today has less than 1 acre of land. Wow. So then that means that we have moved from production being determined by land. And now we have moved to other dimensions of productivity. Now, in our times, talent is a factor of production.
Yes, it is. Huge.
In our talent, in our time, idea is a factor of production. In our time, knowledge is a factor of production.
Not information.
Not information.
Knowledge.
Yes.
Wow. For once, I'm speechless.
So one of the fundamental aspects is we have never appreciated where does everything come from? Because everything must have a source, an origin. Where did my shoe, if there is something like a shoe market, now what inspired the formation of a shoe market? What informed fashion industry? What informed automobile industry? Ideas. So intellectual property seeks to harness in every individual that whatsoever you're thinking about, whatsoever you can do, your creative expressions, if you can just be deliberate with your creative expressions, then an entire economy can come out of it. Because that is what we don't have. All of us, if I come and I want to do something, most of us, we will work on what someone else built. You know, no one is coming up with anything new. Does it mean that we have been stopped from developing new things. What most of us are lacking is, how do I follow up on what I'm doing so that a new economy can come out of that? Yes.
I think many of us come from the notion that I have all these ideas,
Yes.
but I don't know how to actualize them, or I don't have funding to make them a reality.
Okay.
You know, I don't think anybody would be interested in them. And so from that premise, then we actually don't do anything about it. They just remain ideas. Yeah. Or because no one would be willing even to listen to these ideas.
One, having an idea and giving myself to that idea are two different things.
Yeah.
Most of us, we are very passive. One of the phrases I read, which I'm not good on quoting people, but I believe...
How come then you're a lawyer?
I quote the law. I rarely quote people.
Yeah.
One of the quotes that has really remained with me in my life is one. Thinking is the hardest job there is. And that is why very few people indulge in it. Every individual, we have over 100 billion brain cells. That means every second they are moving, they are connecting.
Away.
Yes, every second. At the end of the day, we have 86,400 seconds. So which means in a single second, I have over 100 million thoughts. I have over 100 million impulses. Now, what distinguishes an individual from another is that individual that has the ability to just follow one line of thought and put away all the 99,000 or 99 million. So when we are having that conversation, then your idea begins to take a life form of its own, because ideas are living things. When you give yourself to an idea, that idea begins to permeate your entire being by the life form of that idea. Because the life form of that idea is to create all these universes that we have. It's our ideas that are shaping reality. So which means we don't even have reality without ideas. So intellectual property seeks to build capacities in an individual that, can I stay on this line for one line of thought? Can I stay on this train of thought? Because at the end of that train of thought, as far as intellectual property is concerned, is what new market can come out of it.
Next time on Clean Money Wednesday.
How many evolutions, so to speak, has the men coat gone through? We had double breast, we have single breast, we have 3 buttons, we have 5 buttons. Those are just people trying to advance their thought patterns to creating new markets within which has already been established. Now the challenge here is this, that for me to be innovative, does it mean that I need to come up with something new? Because that is whereby most of us, we are fundamentally lacking that. Nilikuwa nimethinki kitu lakini inakaje mood wiki kitu.
Exactly.
We all have the same words that we have in the English dictionary, right? But how is it that one person, how one interacts with certain words, and at the intervals and arrangement of words, we have difference of thoughts?
Yes.
So which means that your thought finds expression to the extent of the wording you give to your thought. Because thoughts in themselves are just impulses. Yes. So then that means that as an individual, for me to bring out of my idea, then as an individual, it is important to equip my brain with tools. That those tools will give and expand the reach of my thought.
This is Clean Money TV.